Today, we're going to break down a pretty dramatic policy shift that sent some serious shockwaves through the US-India trade relationship.
So, picture this. It's August 27th, 2025, and a decision comes out of Washington that just hammers the Indian economy with what a lot of experts are calling a strategic shock.
And what caused that shock? Well, it all comes down to this number. A staggering new 50% tariff slapped on a massive range of goods coming in from India. And let's be clear, this wasn't some tiny tweak. This was a trade bombshell.
And to really give you a sense of the scale here, that new 50% tariff, well, it applies to over $60 billion worth of Indian exports. That's the value of goods now facing these incredibly heavy new duties. We're talking about everything from textiles and gems all the way to furniture.
I mean, the sheer scale of this, it's just wild. This move hits a massive 2/3 of all of India's exports to the US, which, by the way, is its single biggest market. So this isn't just a disruption. It's like a fundamental break in a major trade artery. Okay, so those are the big headline numbers. But to really get what this feels like on the ground, let's zoom in on one of the hardest hit sectors, India's auto components industry. We're talking about a $7 billion a year trade relationship that is now, suddenly, at serious risk. You see, India had become this key supplier of auto parts to the US, and now that entire supply chain is under just immense pressure.
And the pain isn't even spread out evenly. Parts for regular cars and light trucks, they're facing a new 25% tariff. But components for big commercial vehicles, they get hit with the full 50%. I mean, both are just massive jumps from the old 3 to 5% rates.
And the pressure on businesses was immediate. You've got these small and medium-sized companies, which are really the backbone of the industry, and suddenly their US customers are asking them to eat a cost they just can't afford. It puts their profit margins and honestly their entire businesses at risk.
And the math here, it's just brutal. The average profit margin in this industry is about 12.5%. The new tariff cost is 25%. It's simply impossible for these companies to absorb a cost that is literally double their profit.
So, faced with this, is India just taking it lying down? No way. It has escalated the whole dispute to a global body, filing a formal complaint with the World Trade Organization. And that move really signals just how seriously they view these tariffs. Which, of course, brings us to the $60 billion question. Why? Why is all this happening? Let's unpack the really complex mix of geopolitics and trade economics that sources say are behind this whole thing.
Seriously, what would prompt such a drastic move, especially against a country that's considered a key strategic partner?
Well, according to the source material, the official reason being cited is India's indirect import of Russian oil. But analysts are pointing to a bunch of other factors. India's growing role in the BRICS bloc, supposed attempts to undermine the US dollar, and of course the long-standing trade deficit between the two countries.
And the controversy really comes into focus when you look at these numbers, which many analysts are calling disproportionate. I mean, look at this. Countries like China and the EU have way larger trade deficits with the US, but they're facing much lower tariff rates than the 50% that got slapped on India. And to really underscore just how serious this is, you have prominent commentators like Fareed Zakaria weighing in. He's suggesting that the long-term strategic consequences could be severe, potentially doing real damage to a critical partnership.
So, where does all this leave us? Let's pull the camera back out a bit and look at the global ripple effects and how India is trying to strategize its way through this crisis.
You know, it's pretty basic economics, right? When one country's exports suddenly get way more expensive, a vacuum is created. And you can bet there's a whole line of other nations, from China and Vietnam to Mexico and Turkey, that are positioned to step right in and grab that market share at India's expense.
And the potential cost for India is, well, it's pretty stark. These projections show a potential 43% drop in exports headed to the US. We're talking a fall from $86.5 billion down to under $50 billion. That could also mean a nearly 1-point drop in the country's GDP growth.
But India isn't just standing still. They're already developing a multi-pronged strategy to fight back. This includes everything from smart, tactical negotiations and providing targeted relief to those hardest-hit sectors, to actively trying to diversify their export markets away from the US and pushing domestic reforms to be more competitive.
And this whole situation really leaves us with a fundamental, big-picture question. In a world with all these shifting alliances and so much uncertainty, what's actually more valuable in the long run? Fixing a trade imbalance or protecting and nurturing a reliable strategic partnership? It's a question that's probably going to define international relations for years to come.